So it is fortunately finally springtime here in Alaska. The grass is finally starting to poke up through all the melting snow outside. That means it's time to get the mower ready. But not quite the mower that you're thinking of. So after watching all those other guys with their mowers, I decided I wanted to make one of my own. So what I've got here is, I believe it's a 2003 Craftsman LT2000. It's got the 18.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine in it. Just a hydrostatic rear transaxle. So you got one pulley coming off your engine, one pulley back there on your transaxle, so you really only have two pulleys that you have to worry about swapping. You do have your tensioner pulley and all that, but that's nothing that you really need to change the size on. My plan for this thing is going to be to lower it quite a bit, have some ideas of how I think it's going to work. Definitely going to be some fabrication work involved, so I'll get to try out my horrible welding a little bit more on this project. And then some pulley swaps, probably do some things like some underglow, try to really make it look the part as much as we can, maybe even throw a nice hood scoop on there. This thing is actually in really good shape. It's almost kind of a shame to cut it up. The mowing deck was seized up on the thing, so the guy didn't want it anymore. And for the price of free, it was pretty hard to say no to. So we're gonna go ahead and start stripping this thing down, basically pull all the body parts off, pull the motor out, get it down to just the bare frame. That way we can really see what space we have to work with and what will need to be done to get this thing nice and low. That's going to be the hardest part of it. The pulley design on these isn't super easily swappable, but with a little bit of cutting and some welding, I think we can make it work really well.
Bolt comes out. There she is. Get it. There comes that bracket. And
There we go. There's the front end. So we've kind of mocked up this front axle here. Got it figured out where it needs to be. Basically these brackets here are just gonna have to be trimmed down because we're currently scraping on the brackets with it lowered all the way to the ground. So we're just gonna whack those off. Should work really well. Have to figure out something for the steering here, but have a pretty good idea of how the front is going to be lowered. So here's where we're at. We ended up taking the diff and we flipped it over because before the pulley used to be on the top, but you'll notice as you bring this up, kind of notched the frame here, brought these brackets up on either side, brings the entire diff up, and that pulley, as you can see, it would end up going right through there, which isn't gonna work. So right on that shaft there is where the pulley goes. So we got her flipped. Not quite mounted up yet. Got to kind of shave off some of this casing here just to get it where these brackets will sit flat. And then once we do that, this thing will bolt up perfectly. The hardest part I think is kind of in front of us because it's going to be making all the linkage for the forward, reverse, and then also we still got the steering in the front to work out. We are getting closer though. I don't think this was the hardest part, but we are making progress. So got this rear axle fully mounted now. Really sucks, there's only two tiny little bolts on either side that hold this on. And there used to be a bracket that went across, but since this is flipped, that no longer worked. So I kind of made this little bracket here out of some of the scrap chunks, ties into here, and then mounted it to the side of the frame. So that should give us a little bit of structural integrity for when this thing's popping mad wheelies. That way this thing doesn't just flex and completely eject itself. Just finished setting the motor back in this unit. And you guys can kind of see, did a little something weird here with the motor mounts. This is extremely cheap. Not the best way to do it, but that's what we're using. So I spaced these up about 3/4 of an inch on all 4 mounts all around the motor. And that brought this pulley that we're gonna be using up. So now we're sitting at about, I think it was 2.5 inches sitting down there, and then also gonna be the same on the back. So we're gonna be nice and straight. Do still have to figure out the clutch pulleys, but for right now, I am trying to work out how to get these brakes going. And I think I kind of have an idea. So right here, we've got this original lever that actuated the mowing deck. And I think I'm going to turn that into a sort of handbrake, because if you look down here, you got these 2 levers, which we only really need one. We'll use that one there on the opposite side since that's where the brake will line up. But it goes up as you pull on it. So we're gonna drop down kind of a piece of bar down there, have another piece that's gonna go back and act as kind of like a leverage point. So it'll pull up on the back side, which will force the front side down and push this rod backward. And then you can see back here, we got the brake. So it'll push that back and actuate our brake. Just bolted that new steering arm in. Looks like it's gonna work. Nothing's actually tightened yet, but we're getting pretty good. I mean, basically full rotation. We are kind of limited on how far we can go just because of how this whole unit ended up working out. You can see here the tie rod arm kind of hits on the front of that frame. So that's essentially our bump stop, but not really seeing any issues with this linkage. It's a tight fit, but it works. So really, now that we've got the brake fabbed up, steering fabbed up, so the only remaining piece is really gonna be, I guess you call it the gear selector, but it's also kind of the throttle. So whatever we wanna call that, but that's actually gonna be pretty easy. I think I showed you guys before earlier, but that little shaft right there that comes out of the hydro transmission, I think I'm just gonna pull that out the side here and weld up some type of shift lever. We're getting closer. The next problem I was having up front was getting these fenders to clear the tires. So did a little bit of trimming. It's not the best looking, but we may come back and do fenders or something later. Now it should work. So now, yeah, that'll work just fine. Could look worse, could look better. Do get a bit of rubbing up here in the front at full lock, so I may trim that a bit more. But now I think it should work though. She is tucked in there for sure. Trying to spare as little room as possible. Kind of messed up that cut. Need to come back in and probably round that out, make it look a little better. Did the same thing on this side. I was trying to have a couple. Initially, I was just needing to take out this metal part, but I should have angled it down more. Easy to fix though. I almost want to build like some fenders or something to come off of here. For now, the main thing is just getting this thing rolling, but we can do the cosmetic fine tuning a little later. We're getting there though. Rolled out these fenders a bit. Keep in mind, this is not a show machine. We're going for a little bit of rat rod sort of deal here. So at least that's what I'm saying, just so it's justifiable to have the fenders all marked up like this, but there ain't much room there, but it'll work. Still do need to notch out a bit more for the shifter here, and then we're gonna be riveting a plate over this. It just wasn't gonna work. So this actually has to come back quite a bit further, because now backwards is our new forwards and forward is reverse. So there's quite a bit more travel that needs to happen for us to get full speed out of this guy. From the factory, the battery sits under the seat, so I haven't tried it yet, but the big thing now is going to be to see if it will still fit under there now that we've lowered the thing. And it looks like it will. There's about a hand width of space underneath there. So that will work for now. I do still kind of want to drop the seat, but like I was saying, we're just getting this thing running for now. If I do go to drop the seat, we may have to relocate the battery, and I'm thinking behind here will be a really good spot. There's quite a bit of space. I could build some type of bracket or box off of the back of here and just set the battery in. I'll show you guys here what I'm kind of talking about. This thing's fairly narrow, and it would sit just about perfectly up there. Of course, this opening is a little wider, so it would pretty much sit perfectly recessed into there with just a little bracket. Could make it cover so it didn't look too ugly. So I think once I go to lower that seat, that'll be what we do. For now though, it's going back in the factory location just so we can see if this thing even moves. Well, unfortunately everything kind of fell apart on us last night. Had the thing pretty much fully put back together aside from little bits and pieces on the engine side. But I was finally ready to test this thing and see if it would move under its own power. Got it fired up and nothing happened with the wheels. So did a little more research, and it sounds like you can't have these hydrostatic transmissions flipped upside down. It just won't pump the fluid and things won't function properly. Everybody else I had seen that did have them flipped upside down, turns out they had actual multi-speed transmissions, so it makes it a little different in that case. It's not the end of the world. It will just mean that I have to pull the transmission back out, flip it back over how it was from the factory, which is going to have the pulley obviously elevated quite a bit where it's going to be way above what would be in line coming off of the engine. So what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to put in a jack shaft. And basically that jack shaft is going to be mounted. We're going to have a piece of angle iron. This will all be cut out, but there'll be a piece of angle iron that goes in between the frame rails, and then we'll have a jack shaft that comes up, a pulley on top, which will connect to the pulley on the hydrostatic transmission, and then there will be a pulley that drops down in between the frame rails, and that'll be what connects to our engine pulley. So not the end of the world, it's just going to be a little more time consuming and a few more parts and modifications than I was originally hoping for. So until those parts do come in, there's kind of what she looks like. Doesn't look half bad at all. Wish I could have had it all done in this video, but just not going to happen. So thanks for hanging in there and watching the video, guys. We'll catch you next time.